Hi, I'm Dr. Sheila John, serving as the head of the Department of Costume Design and Fashion in Bishop Appasamy College of Arts and Science, Coimbatore, South India. I'm here to talk on the basics of pattern making, that is draping. It is interesting to note that garments owned by primitive men and women followed this draping method. They draped the skins of the animals and leaves as simple and interesting forms to cover the body. Slowly, the art of sewing developed and the method of preparing patterns using drafting came into existence. But the passion for these drapes still lingers among the fashion designers. Pattern making is an art as well as science. It is more of a science in the method of drafting, whereas it is more of an art in the draping method. At the end of this lesson, you will learn the significance of preparing patterns using the draping method, the body form and its parts, and the tools required for draping, and also the method of draping bodice front, bodice back, skirt front and skirt back. Let me first brief you about the method of pattern making. This can be broadly categorized into two. The first is the drafting method and the second is the draping method. The drafting method is widely followed in the ready-made garment industries where the garments are manufactured in bulk. This method is also found to be ideal in men's garment sector. But the draping method is considered significant over the drafting for the following reasons. The first, the drafting method requires a skilled pattern master for creating garments in this form. It is difficult to manage and create a two-dimensional pattern piece for a stitched three-dimensional garment. The pattern master should have a sound technical knowledge about pattern drafting and its principles. It involves mathematical calculations, so it may not be easy for all. It cannot be used for garments with complicated drapes. We will now learn more about the draping method. Draping is a process of creating patterns with muslin cloth on a body form. In other words, a piece of fabric is draped on the body forms with positions for darts and pleats. This is done in a cheaper and a thinner fabric named muslin. This method is ideal for garment styles with complicated drapes. Interesting and beautiful drapes can be achieved through this method. If a person remains in the same size, the customer need not go to the couture house for giving measurement if the body form of his size is available in the couture house. Designs can be approved through the internet and discussions, if any, can be also continued through the phone. After the confirmation of the order, the dressmaker will create it with the help of the dress form available in the couture house. This is ideal for celebrities and high-profile people who will not be able to spend their time in the designer house. And the limitation for this method is the preparation of the body form for individual measurements. It is costly, time-consuming and a laborious process. In majority of the cases, people change in sizes and hence the dress forms become useless, and again the preparation of a dress form all over again becomes a tedious one. We will now learn about the body form and its types. Body form is a replica of a three-dimensional human body without face, hands and legs. Body form comes in different sizes for child, women and men of different age groups. But this is usually in the standard measurements. The body forms are padded with a thin layer of foam and are mounted on a vertical stand. The stand is positioned with wheels which helps in easy movement of the body forms. The body forms can be rotated freely, which makes it easier for the designer to handle the body form during draping. The partial body forms is also available which does not have legs, while the full body forms have legs. It also comes with collapsible shoulders. Body forms can also be created for any individual size. Without the brown paper, drafting cannot be done, and in the same way, draping is not possible without the body form. It is very important to know about the essential tools that is needed for the draping process. The first one is a style tape. This is a narrow satin ribbon which is pinned on to the body form along the waistline, bust line and hip line. This serves as a guideline for draping the muslin pattern. L square scale. This is a ruler in the shape of an L. This has measurements marked in centimeters and inches. And we also need iron box and an ironing board. The ironing board, as we know, has a smooth padded surface, and for ironing, a dry or a steam iron box can be used. If a dry iron box is used, a wet cloth is needed to dampen the fabric taken for ironing. We also need bell pins and pin cushions. Bell pins is also termed as dressmaker pins. They are metallic pins with sharp points and are smaller in size. This holds the fabric in place. When the muslin pattern is draped over the body form, pin cushion comes in handy. We will also need a measuring tape for measuring the length and width of the body form, and also to measure the fabric. This is a flexible tape with measurements marked in inches on one side and centimeters on the other sides. French curve is also another tool which is used in draping. It is a set of rulers with different shapes of curves. This is used for correcting and redrawing the neckline and arm side curves during the truing process. We also need a carbon paper which comes in a blue, black and yellow colors. It is used for transferring the markings from one material to another. We also require a marking chalk which has to be used for marking the lines on the muslin cloth. And another tool is the tracing wheel. This is a tooth-shaped wheel which is used along the carbon paper for transferring the markings. The most important part of a draping is the muslin fabric. The muslin fabric is a woven cotton fabric which is comparatively cheaper. It comes in a varied thickness. It can be a soft and lightweight muslin fabric which is used as an alternate for fabric of like silk, polyester, etc. It can be a thick muslin which is used to duplicate woolen patterns. So, thus we see the choice of the muslin depends on the appearance and thickness of the final fabric that is used for designing. It is very important to learn about the preparatory process for draping. It comprises of three main important steps. The first is the identification of grain lines, the second is the blocking process, and the third is the pressing process. The identification of grain lines is a very important step. Before the actual draping process, the fabric is checked for the grain lines, and it is important to check the grain lines for a correct fitted garments. Selvage is the finished edge of the fabric. We need to know about the different types of grains. The straight grain refers to the lengthwise direction of the fabric. It also lies parallel to the selvage. Cross grain refers to the widthwise direction of the fabric and it is perpendicular to the selvage. Bias is any direction other than lengthwise or widthwise direction of the fabric. A true bias is cut at 45 degrees. The special characteristic of the bias is it has a maximum stretch. Cross grain has a minimum stretch and straight grain has no stretch. The next preparatory process is the blocking process. It is a process of aligning the lengthwise and crosswise grains at right angles to each other. It is also a process of straightening the fabric. Here, the selvages are clipped at equal intervals and the fabric is stretched in the bias direction. The fabric is folded in lengthwise to check and ensure that the straight grain and the cross grain lie exactly perpendicular to each other. After the blocking process, the fabric is pressed or ironed, and this process is called as pressing. The blocked fabric is placed along the ironing board and ironed using an iron box. As I told you earlier, if a dry iron is used, the fabric is dampened using a wet cloth. Pressing is repeated till all the wrinkles in the fabric is removed. We will now concentrate on the main theme, that is the preparation of draping patterns. In this module, the sequence of steps in creating the basic patterns of bodice front, bodice back, skirt front and skirt back will be explained. We shall first learn the draping of basic bodice front. The basic bodice front is created on the left side of the body form. The basic bodice front is symmetrical and hence only half of the pattern is made. This pattern, that is the bodice front pattern, has only one dart along the waistline. And the following are the sequence of steps followed in the draping process. The first is the preparation of the body form. The second is preparation of the fabric. Third is the draping of fabric. And the last one is the truing process. In the preparation of the body form step, the style tape is pinned along the bust line. The bust line is also termed as apex line. The tape is pinned in the center front line along with the style tape taken over the bust and pinned along the left side. Another tape is also taken and pinned along the waistline from the center front line to the side seam line. These lines serve as a reference line for draping the front pattern. With this, the body form is ready for draping. Simultaneously, the fabric is also prepared where a rectangular piece of fabric is cut with the required length and width measurements. For the lengthwise measurement, the length of the body's front is measured from the neck to the waistline of the body form along the center front line. Also, leave an extra allowance of 4 inches at the top and the bottom. For widthwise measurements, the distance between the center front and the side of the body form along the bust line is measured. Add an extra allowance of 4 inches along the width at the side seam. In the muslin fabric, a fold for 1 inch is made in the lengthwise direction, that is along the straight grain. This serves as a center front line, and in the muslin fabric, apex line is also drawn using the L scale in the middle of the fabric perpendicular to the center front. Mark the side seam line along the apex line. The marked fabric goes for the draping. The muslin fabric is positioned over the body form by matching the center front line and the apex line. After positioning the fabric along the apex line, the fabric is pinned to the body form at the center front neck, center front waist and top of the side seam. Next, remove the wrinkles along the neckline and pin the shoulder line. Cut the neckline after leaving half an inch allowance. Clip the fabric from the top of the neckline to remove the wrinkle and to obtain a smooth curve. After the completion of neckline and the shoulder line, pin the muslin along the side seam line. The excess fabric at the waistline between the center front and the side seam is folded and converted into a dart. This dart is aligned and positioned along the princess line. Next, the fabric along the arm side is smoothened and an armhole curve is marked. Here also the slashes are made. Similarly, the waistline, shoulder line, side seam line is marked with a marking chalk. The excess fabric beyond the marked lines is cut with an extra allowance of ½ inch. The process of draping on the body form is now complete, and this will be followed by the last process, that is the truing process. The truing process is a process of transferring the muslin pattern outline and shapes onto a brown paper or a point paper. After the completion of draping process, check if all the lines are drawn, and then the body's front pattern is removed from the body form and is placed on the paper. The outlines of the patterns like shoulder line, neckline, center front line, waistline, side seam line are transferred to the paper using the carbon paper and the tracing wheel. The position of the dart is also marked. All the outlines are corrected and smoothened for a neat continuous line or a curve. French curves are used for drawing a smooth curve. Seam allowances for stitching are given at the end of the truing process. The next is a draping of the basic body's back. The basic body's back pattern has a waistline dart, and the steps in draping the pattern are similar to the steps used in the front pattern. The only difference is in the front pattern, the apex line serves as a cross grain, and in the back pattern, it is positioned across the shoulder blade. After the completion of patterns, the pattern or the muslin cloth is removed from the body form and is subjected to the truing process. I hope you have learned the body's front and the back. Now we will move on to the draping of the basic skirt front and back. The basic skirt front pattern has two waistline darts, and the steps in preparing the draping of the skirt is also similar to the draping of the front. The steps are the preparation of body form, preparation of fabric, draping of fabric, and finally the truing process. In the preparation of the body form, a style tape is fixed along the waistline. The hip position is also marked with the style tape. The hip is usually 7 to 9 inches from the waistline. The skirt pattern is a symmetrical pattern, and hence the draping pattern is created for only half of the skirt. The hip line and the waistline will be perpendicular to the floor. The preparation of the fabric involves the following steps. A rectangular piece of fabric is first cut with the following measurements. For the lengthwise measurement, place the tape on the center front line starting from the waistline going beyond the hip line. The length of the skirt may vary according to the taste and desire of the wearer. Add 3 inches onto the top and bottom of the skirt length. The width of the skirt is measured from the center front to the side along the hip line. While cutting the fabric, an extra allowance of 3 inches can be given at the sides. Using the L scale ruler, the hip line is marked in the muslin fabric. This also serves as a guideline for positioning the cross grain on the body form. In the rectangular piece of fabric, fold 1 inch of fabric at the center front line. Lines are also drawn for the side seam using the width measurement. The hip line is also drawn in the appropriate position. Now we'll see the draping of the fabric on the body form. Place the 1 inch fold along the center front position in such a way that the hip line of the fabric is placed exactly over the style tape placed on the hip line of the body form. The fabric is smoothened and pinned along the center front waistline and the side seam line. The excess fabric along the waist is converted to two waistline darts positioned between princess line and the side seam line. The waistline, side seam line and the hemline is marked neatly using the marking chalk. The excess material beyond the marked lines is cut, leaving an allowance of ½ inch. Now that the pattern is complete, we will go on to the truing process. The skirt is removed from the body form and placed flat over a paper. Using the carbon paper and the tracing wheel, the markings of the center front line, waistline, side seam line and hemline is drawn on the paper. The position and length and width of the darts is also marked on the paper. This same procedure is followed for the skirt back pattern also. Now that we know about the basic bodice front and back, skirt and back, we'll also know a little more about creating variations in the body's front and back patterns. Yokes can be created along the shoulder line, waistline or princess line. Fullness can be introduced at the desired positions. For example, small tucks can be placed along the princess line or slightly above the apex line. Different shapes can be given in the neckline. Collars like flat collar, shirt collar or any other collar can be introduced along the neckline. The positions of the trimmings and decorations like frills and laces can be placed in appropriate positions. Similarly, many variations can also be brought in the basic skirt front and back pattern. Inclusion of yoke can be done at the waistline, which is also called as midriff yoke. Yokes can also be placed in any other desired position and shape. Addition of fullness like pleats, gaudets, etc. can also be done easily and perfectly. Trimmings and decorations can be added as per the taste. We shall also learn a little about the limitation of the draping. As we know, the body forms are available in standard sizes and not all the individuals will fit into these sizes. And as we learned earlier, the creation of a body form is a laborious process. And an individual has to sit for a continuous long hours during the process of creating the dress form. It is common that the people either put on weight or reduce in size. Either way, the body form becomes useless and hence the draping process cannot be done. The process of draping is a beautiful art, and this brings marvelous designs in the hands of the creative designer and people like you. Numerous interesting styles can be created using this method. The basic knowledge that you learned now in the draping will definitely enable you to create more number of styles. Try different styles and gain more knowledge. God bless you. Have a nice day.